The Bakerfield Historical Marker was made possible by the William G. Pomeroy Foundation.
What now serves as a public park was once the space of education and historical tool that is aerial photography. Aerial photography is defined as any photo taken from the air and is an important source for historical research. The practice itself can be traced back as far as 1858, when French photographer Gaspard Félix Touchard took a photo in Paris from a hot air balloon. World War I was a major international conflict with unprecedented amounts of destruction and carnage. Rochester, New York, also known as the Kodak City, had a major impact in terms of home front efforts. Here, the United States Signal Army Corps and Eastman Kodak Company collaborated to establish the United States Army School of Aerial Photography. Lessons about developing and printing photographs took place in a controlled laboratory setting at Kodak Park. The Eastman Kodak Company is a pillar of photography, revolutionizing the way we take pictures. Kodak even created the Kodak A2 aerial camera, which was commonly used during the war. The technologies of Kodak contributed to the world of photography by making cameras easier to use and therefore more accessible to a wide range of people, helping the process of documentation during wartime.
Bakerfield was where the students of the U.S. Aerial School of Aerial Photography learned how to develop and print photographs outside of a lab setting, so to really replicate the kind of conditions they might face overseas on battlefields in Europe. It was also the site where the airplanes would fly from and where the pilots and mechanics for the planes were housed. Aerial photography was photography used for, intelligence gathering purposes and surveying. So we're really talking about a strategic form of photography versus an aesthetic form of photography. So aerial photography, we're talking about images that are quickly taken and quickly developed, and used in large part for things like map making. Interestingly, at the school, they weren't teaching photography per se. They were recruiting people that, for the large part, had photography experience already. So they weren't giving them lessons necessarily in photography, they were giving them lessons in developing and printing photographs in various climatic conditions and under certain speed requirements.
Starting off with a class of under 600 students, enrollment numbers would grow to over 2,000 in the span of 10 months, before the school closed its doors in December of 1918. The Bakerfield Historical Marker was established in 2019 to commemorate the school.
The photographers that were from Rochester, and there were about 200, the school had set a quota that they wanted 200 students from Rochester with photography experience. Those folks, their names were actually published in the local newspaper when they were accepted to the unit. So we do know who those folks are. The names of the officers were printed in the newspapers. They had their photographs, and occasionally there'd be a little feature story about a soldier/student at the school. Humbling to later learn that this site, that for me was just always a site of recreation, very humbling to learn that it was a very historically significant site. This was, as far as we can tell, housed the only active military unit in Rochester's history. So it was connected not just to Rochester's military history, but appropriately enough, also our rich history of photography. These are basically free public sites of historical memory, historical commemoration, and they not only educate people in Rochester or visitors about a certain piece of our history, but I think that the more that people feel like they have a connection to their history, or a connection to our shared collective past, then the more they feel connected to each other in the present, the more we become more of a unified community. History really just isn't in books and libraries and museums.
The U.S. Army School of Aerial Photography holds a significant impact on our local history of both World War I and photography itself. In order for ideas to live on, history must be documented and made publicly accessible. The stories of the soldiers and students from this school deserve to be remembered. There are countless stories like this that have gone unnoticed, and it is people like Emily Morey and Bill Sawyers that have put in the work to remember and respect history.
The Bakerfield Historical Marker was made possible by the William G. Pomeroy Foundation. If you know of any historical places or people you'd like to be showcased, contact the foundation for more information.